and he's going to be scared for the rest of his life now.
The incident happened last week while Michael was at his grandmother's house. Where did this happen at?
Right here.
Michael says officers told him they were looking for a young black male with a gun, and he fit the description.
They put me in handcuffs. I was scared, I was crying, and I had used it on myself. And then that's when they told me I escaped from juvenile and I had a gun. I said I didn't escape from juvenile and I didn't have a gun on me.
Michael's grandmother says officers told her they were looking for a teenager, not a 10-year-old.
I even searched my own grandson. I said he don't have anything. He should have never been put in no handcuff.
After about 15 minutes, officers released Michael. He says he'll never forget this run.
There's no trust, there's no basis for communication. And what I say to people is you've got to put America in the context, and this is the analogy I've used. Every time a black guy commits some crime, one of the first things we talk about is, wow, look at the poverty, look at the lack of a father in the home, and we try to put in context his behavior. But we don't ever try to put in context what happened in America. We don't try to put in context and say, well, what was the nature of the age? What was George Washington raised like? You know, they were slave owners. And we don't ask, well, wait a minute, if you from a child, you're taught this is the way of the world, this is the way God intended, we ought to be amazed that some of them were able to say, wait a minute, something's wrong with this. So we don't try to put this in context, and the church is where that ought to happen so that we can begin to look at one another as brothers and sisters in Christ and help lead our country past this stuff as opposed to continuing to wallow in it. When you add, James, I'll stop here, but when you add a young man growing up in a home without a father, and I lived in a foster home for the first 10 years of my life, and I tell people I've been on both sides of it. I was bitter, I was angry, my attitude was, my father's not here to tell me what to do, you're not telling me what to do. You add to that somebody speaking into their ear, you know, the white people have done, look, they held us in slavery.
No, we did not have to. You say, excuse me, sir? No, I said they didn't have to answer.
Home, you know, being paid to go home and relax for a few weeks. You got a formula where it becomes very, very difficult to even get to the economic, political, policy issues that we can begin to address with people. So please pray for forgiveness in the black community to take root.
Umbrella, she's up, she's up. Level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So down in Florida, a brother by the name of Gregory Hill Jr., who was in his own house listening to music when he was shot and killed by police in his own garage. So let's see how somebody minding their own business in their own house ended up getting shot and killed by the police.
We now know the name of the Fort Pierce man killed in a standoff with St. Lucie County Sheriff's deputies. News Channel 5's John Shaman is live in Fort Pierce right now, where the sheriff just wrapped up the news conference a short time ago. John?
Well, the sheriff expressing his condolences to the family of 30-year-old Gregory Hill Jr., the victim in this case. There was a lot of activity outside of Hill's home today on Avenue Q. Detectives still scouring the scene looking for additional evidence. Now, the confrontation that led up to this on Tuesday began after a call came in that there was loud and obscene music coming from Hill's home. Two deputies arrived who tried making contact with Hill. Now, when Hill manually opened his garage door, the detectives say that he had a gun and raised it at deputies as he tried to then shut the garage manually. The sheriff says that is when deputies fired.
The whole issue is...
I'll never see him again.
Oh, come on,
Monique Davis is talking about her fiancé, Gregory Hill Jr.
I'm supposed to be planning a wedding. You're not supposed to be planning a funeral. It's going to be so hard.
Hill was shot and killed inside his garage Tuesday afternoon by a St. Lucie County Sheriff's deputy who was responding to a noise complaint. Sheriff Ken Mascara says when deputies went to the home, Hill opened the garage door and they noticed he was pointing a semi-automatic handgun at them.
He had the gun in the right hand. He reached up with his left hand and pulled the garage door down.
They said it was a threat for their life. Where is the threat if you got to shoot a man through the garage door?
All I know is the deputy on scene reported that gun came to my direction And these deputies are trained not to take a bullet, to respond to a bullet. When they fear for their lives, they respond.
Davis says she's having a difficult time explaining what happened to their small children. She says one of her daughters was right across the street standing outside her school when the shooting happened.
My 9-year-old saw when Daddy let the garage down and everything. So there's something wrong, something. My 9-year-old, she have to live with this also.
And I would ask that the community just stay calm. We're still investigating this. Any homeowner can have a gun in their home. That is true. However, when law enforcement arrives at your home doing a lawful duty and you're confronted with law enforcement and they give you an order to drop that gun, the last thing anyone should do is raise that gun.
Why would you come to a call that says loud music and it turns into a deadly, just a killing?
Didn't know if Hill was still alive inside. The sheriff said some of Hill's family told them that he was alive but scared to come out. A gun was found by Hill's body that was just inside the garage. Now, the sheriff did tell us the two deputies who were involved in the shooting, Christopher Newman, who had just joined the sheriff's office last October but had spent a decade with the Fort Pierce Police Department. He has no disciplinary actions prior. And the other deputy involved, Edward Lopez, who served in several capacities in the sheriff's office since 2004. He has one minor reprimand in his file, both men on administrative leave tonight. An autopsy scheduled on Hill's body tomorrow. The sheriff would not say who may have fired the deadly shots or how many times Hill was hit.
So this brother Gregory Hill Jr. was in his own house listening to music when some random woman, and my guess she was a white woman, heard the music and claimed she took offense. So she called the police on his brother to make a noise complaint. Now, mind you, in that city, the law says the first time is a warning, the second time is a citation, and the third time is a misdemeanor. Now, none of those punishments include the death penalty, but this was the first complaint that he had. So Deputy Christopher Newman and his partner Edward Lopez were the cops that responded, and within 2 minutes, this brother was shot dead in his own home. Now, the police claim this brother opened the garage door and then pulled a gun on the cops. So he was pointing an unloaded gun at the cops, and the sheriff, Ken Mascara, said that with the gun in one hand, he began to shut the garage door with the other hand. So the deputy Christopher Newman feared for his life so much that he had to fire 4 shots through the garage door. 2 hit this brother in the chest and 1 hit him in the head. I guess these cops had x-ray vision. They could see him pointing the gun through the door. Then after they shoot him and he's already dead, they decided to call a SWAT team and snipers for backup. Then they finally kicked the door in and sprayed so much tear gas they couldn't even live in the house anymore. And they probably went in there and handcuffed his body, and they said they found an unloaded gun in his back pocket. So I guess after he got shot in the head, before he died, he put his gun back in his back pocket. But despite the Second Amendment, and Florida being the stand your ground law state that it is, and despite the affiliation these police organizations have with the NRA, the police justified themselves because this brother had a gun. They found themselves innocent and decided not to press charges.
4 years later, the family of Gregory Hill is still reeling from the police-involved shooting that ended his life.
It's Father's Day. They got to go out to the graveyard. They'll see their father because their father was murdered.
In January 2014, 2 Florida sheriff's deputies responded to Hill's home after a noise complaint. The officers claim Hill threatened them with a gun as he closed his garage door. Sheriff's Deputy Christopher Newman opened fire, striking Hill 3 times.
They're taught as if their life is in danger, they could use deadly force to counter that danger.
Tests showed Hill's blood alcohol content was 5 times the legal driving limit, and an unloaded gun was found in his back pocket. Hill's family filed a wrongful death suit against the sheriff's office. The jury found Hill 99% responsible for his own death and awarded his family $4, $1 for funeral expenses and $1 for each of his 3 children.
Once I heard the amount, slap in the face.
In a statement, the sheriff's office said, Deputy Newman made the best decision he could for the safety of his partner, himself, and the public, given the circumstances he faced. Hill's mother says for his family, the pain still feels fresh.
I hurt, but at least I don't live part of my life. These kids haven't even begun to live their life.
After 10 hours, a jury found that Deputy Christopher Newman wasn't liable for the death of Gregory Hill Jr. at all. They said the sheriff, Ken Mascara, was 1% liable, and that his brother Gregory Hill Jr. was 99% responsible for his own death. He didn't call the police, he didn't break any laws. He wasn't the one that shot through a garage door. But because he was drunk in his own home, listening to music that offended some white woman, that makes him responsible for being shot in the head. Then on top of that, just to rub it in their face and add insult to injury, the jury awarded his family 4 cents just to send a message.
4 cents. That's the compensation a Florida jury awarded to the family of a black man fatally shot by police officers. Seems he was killed in his own garage 4 years ago when officers were investigating a complaint about loud music. According to court documents, the jury established that the officer involved in the shooting was only just slightly negligent. They awarded the family $1 for funeral expenses and furthermore $1 for each of the children. The hearing also found that the officer was only 1% at fault of death, and compensation was then reduced to just 4 cents. There's more. It was also established that the fatally shot man was intoxicated and that sum could be reduced to 0. Here's Gregory Hill, part of his family, who's father of 3. He was fatally shot then 3 times through a garage door by police in 2014. Police claim he was holding a gun. It was later found to be unloaded. The family lawyer says this is a senseless case of police misconduct.
We were in shock as lawyers because I've never seen or heard anything like this. We're not supposed to be punished like that. His fiance walked out of the courtroom when it happened. You have to tell 3 children, Destiny, Ariana, and Gregory III, that their pain and suffering, their loss of a father, is only worth a penny. It's just a preposterous story of law enforcement gone wrong, that here you have a dead man laying there and police think he's barricaded in. He was listening to loud music that had the F word in it, okay? And that's what police came to see, to investigate, and it's not even illegal. It's something that police knock on your door and generally tell you to turn it down.
The family launched a fundraising page to raise money for the children. They've already received more than $30,000. Their lawyer again says that will continue as well, that they'll continue with their battle to try and find some sort of justice after all this time.
100% goes to the children and the rehabilitation of their family home because it was also destroyed by tear gas. We don't understand 99% and 1%. In America, we have the Second Amendment. You know, some people love it, some people hate it, but you're legally allowed to possess a firearm, and you're legally allowed to open the door with a firearm. And we're going to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if we have to. It's that important because it's a precedent of law enforcement. If you're doing nothing illegal, shouldn't be able to shoot you through your closed garage door. It's preposterous.
So at first the jury awarded his family $4, $1 for his funeral and $1 for each of his children. Then the jury came back and reduced it from $4 to 4 cents. So each one of his kids would get 1 cent apiece for their father's death. And then they came back again and reduced it from 4 cents to nothing because they say he was drunk. They said he was 0.4 over the driving limit, which is why he was in his own house, not driving. So even though they wanted to send a message and give them a penny, at the end of the day, they couldn't even take 1% of accountability. And hoping when they investigate themselves, they're going to hold themselves accountable and punish themselves. But we'll be waiting for a long time for that to happen. We shouldn't be arguing with people over the deaths of our brothers and sisters. When we talk about our blood being shed, they try to make it into a debate. Then they turn around and pick our leaders for us and put them in positions to push their agenda. And then bring in a non-black person to quote-unquote fight for our rights. But getting one person released out of prison is not quite prison reform. But they will never actually reform prison, not in our favor anyway. They have made a countless amount of money over the centuries based off the prison industry alone. But nobody is going to get us out of this situation but ourselves. Nobody's going to be held accountable for our blood if we don't hold them accountable ourselves. So we can continue to let them come into our homes, come into our personal space, violate us, and make money and benefit off of our destruction. Or we could put aside our differences and our beliefs and whatever else is holding us back to do what we gotta do. I'm sure we can all agree we're tired of seeing our blood be spilled. We're tired of seeing our children being harmed. But until we can respond with more urgency than they do to protect ourselves, then the situation will continue to happen.
$4. That's the amount a civil jury decided to award a Fort Pierce family after a man was shot and killed by a St. Lucie County deputy.
Only on 5 tonight, the man's fiance is speaking to our Megan McRoberts in a case now gaining national attention.
Well, that $4 was awarded to the family for funeral expenses and for pain and suffering after family members sued the sheriff's office for the deadly shooting. Now family members are calling that settlement a slap in the face. A banner still hangs on this Fort Pierce home with Greg Hill Jr.'s picture. It's where he lost his life in 2014.
Every police car in this county there.
Hill's fiance, Terica Davis, remembers learning a deputy opened fire, killing Hill. It all stemmed from a noise complaint from a mom across the street. Investigators said Deputy Christopher Newman told them he shot at Hill multiple times after seeing a gun when Hill partially opened, then closed his garage door. Newman fired through that door, killing Hill.
I just knew my world was over.
An attorney representing Hill's family said evidence suggested the unloaded gun never left Hill's back pocket. Still, a jury decided the deputy's actions were justified.
I don't believe he was tend to be any threat towards those officers, because this is a guy that's getting married in 2 months. This is a guy that knows his daughter is across the street at the school.
Deputies said Hill was heavily intoxicated. Hill's family sued the sheriff's office for wrongful death and excessive force, among other complaints. But after listening to dozens of witnesses, a jury awarded the family $4. The jury said Hill, a father of 3, was 99% responsible for his own death.
Slap in the face. Like, how can you value someone's life off $4? How can you give $1 to each child for pain and suffering?
Sheriff Ken Mascara said in a statement, quote, Newman was placed in a very difficult situation, and like so many fellow law enforcement officers must do every day, he made the best decision he could for the safety of his partner, himself, and the public, given the circumstances he faced. And Hill's family members said that the funeral expenses exceeded $10,000. They will be appealing this ruling.
As the verdict approaches for Darren Wilson, the Ferguson, Missouri police officer who shot and killed 18-year-old Michael Brown, the city continues to protest what they argue to be an unfair, trigger-happy police force and a war zone reaction to civilian protests. Unfortunately, this is far from the first time we've heard this story in America. Los Angeles, 1991. Rodney King, a 25-year-old black man, refuses to pull over after he's flagged for speeding. After a high-speed chase, 4 police officers surround him and severely beat him. Security footage sparks mass public outrage. Despite that, all 4 officers are acquitted of excessive force charges, and residents riot in South Central LA, causing millions of dollars in damage, thousands of injuries, and 53 deaths. New York, 2006. Sean Bell is drunk at his bachelor party. After an altercation outside a nightclub is misinterpreted by police, Bell and 2 friends are shot 50 times, killing Bell and severely injuring the others.
Oh, Sean Bell, NYPD, go to hell!
Mass protests follow, and despite outcry, all officers tried for the shooting are acquitted. San Francisco, 2009. Oscar Grant is involved in a drunk scuffle on a BART train late on New Year's night. Police respond and detain Grant and several friends. An unarmed Grant resists his subduer, despite being kept prone. An officer on the scene shoots him in the back, in front of dozens of witnesses, some of whom are videotaping the incident. Grant dies in the hospital a few hours later. The community immediately galvanizes to demonstrate against the police's conduct. The officer serves 2 years in prison and is now out on parole. The events inspired the 2013 film Fruitvale Station. Sanford, Florida, 2012. 17-year-old Trayvon Martin is walking home from a convenience store. Neighborhood watch coordinator George Zimmerman believes Martin looks suspicious. After he calls the police, Zimmerman approaches Martin. The two struggle, and Zimmerman fatally shoots and kills the unarmed teenager. Protests spread across the country, with figures like Al Sharpton and President Obama lending their voices in disdain for Florida's Stand Your Ground laws, which to this date have not been changed.
I just ask people to consider, if Trayvon Martin was of age and armed, could he have stood his ground on that sidewalk?
Ferguson, Missouri, 2014. Michael Brown and a friend are walking in the middle of the street. Officer Darren Wilson orders Brown and his friend off the street. A struggle ensues through the officer's truck's window, and a gunshot sends Brown running. Wilson pursues and shoots Brown 6 times. Protests, both violent and peaceful, erupt in Ferguson. Eventually, police deploy in military fashion, using non-lethal beanbag rounds to control protests and injuring several children in the process. Federal and state governments decide to take a second look at the over-militarization of police. Brown's death and the resulting chaos in Ferguson are milestones in the momentum these cases have gained. Outcry is louder on both sides, and while the government pledges to consider reform to police policy and state law, it seems like these stories have become depressingly predictable.
If a white male teen was involved in the same kind of scenario, that from top to bottom, both the outcome and the aftermath might have been different.
How many more times can the country withstand a tragic shooting, a muddy trial, and the resulting chaos?
The neighbor literally just came outside while I was going in to do my inspection on the house and asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I told her, "Hey, I'm an investor. Here's my sign." I always put a bandit sign out in front of a vacant house so people know that I'm an investor and that I'm going in the house. And she said, "No, why don't you just leave? Get out the neighborhood." I was like, "Well, hold on, ma'am. I'm here to do my inspection. Let me do my job." So then she threatened to call the police on me. Hey, how you doing?
Even if you are inside the residence,
Right.
and
Right.
you got a perceived burglary, unless I've got a victim and owner,
Exactly.
I can't prosecute.
Okay, now do you mind telling her that, because I really do not want her coming behind me. I honestly feel threatened, and if it's a way that I can do this, I would like to file a complaint against her because there was no reason for her to do that.
Well, what did she do?
She came out threatening to call the police on me. She was screaming and shouting. I didn't do anything. All I'm trying to do is get in and get my pictures. I mean, that's pretty much it.
About the best I can do on that is I can notate the complaint.
Okay. I would definitely like to do that.
Unless she's threatened you or attacked you, I can't.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fine. But in that case, that's fine. I just don't want to be harassed while I'm doing my inspection.
You're going to let him do what he's going to do. I know, you tried. Listen to me. You tried to do anything to stop him. I'm going to take you to jail.
Why would I do anything to stop him? He's got all the correct paperwork, right? Hurry up, you can get out. No.
I got it. Appreciate it.
You can take his time.
No, he can take all day.
I can take all day,
You
y'all.
can't rush nobody.
It doesn't matter.
They can't rush me.
He's in control. So
I'm in control.
He's got a contract. So that is what it is.
All right, guys, we finna go in. Does anybody mind staying here for 5 minutes?
You keep the camera rolling. But,
Okay.
If you have any problems with her, what I want you to do is call me back over here.
I'm gonna call you as soon as I have a problem with her.
She will go to jail today.
As soon as I have a problem, until you going to jail. You heard him? Just goes to show you guys that this type of stuff is still going on. I mean, you know why the lady called the police on me. By no means do I look threatening. I keep my business cards on me. I keep my contracts on me. I keep signs on me just so people will know, hey, I'm here to look at a house. But at the end of the day, she just did not want me in her neighborhood. So it got to the point where she started to talk bad to the policemen and tell them that they weren't doing their job because they let me enter into the house. But keep in mind, I had the actual owner on the phone talking to the police, letting them know, like, hey, he's fine. He's over there to check out my house. He's interested in buying it. And she heard the owner on the phone and was screaming, "You want him in your house? Why do you want him in your house?" So come on, guys, we know what that's all about. But at the end of the day, she looked real dumb. So I'm going home happy. The police, they were on my side. I told them, hey, stay here, protect me, because she's crazy. She comes in after me. I don't know if I'm going to make it out alive. But to be honest, I'm just happy to be going home now. I'm going to go home and see my wife. I'm about to hug her.
It shows your ignorance.
The black nigger.
Yeah, black nigger.
Black nigger.
Goodbye. Goodbye. That don't hurt me neither, sweetheart. That just shows your ignorance. That name don't bother me. Come on. It shows your ignorance. The black nigger. Yeah, black nigger. Black nigger. Don't bother us. Black bitch.
Go back in the pool.
Bye. No. They're leaving. Call me out of my name and you gonna say get back in the pool?
Next time, don't come to Florida.
Don't touch my niece. Don't
Get your hands off of her. Get your hands off of her.
Don't touch my niece. Goodbye.
That's going to be assault.
Goodbye.
Or of course you haven't graduated and you don't know the Constitution of the United States and what it says.
Of what? That you could just walk around calling somebody a nigger?
Yes, it's called free speech in America. Right to free speech. Look it up.
Fucked up.
They asked him to get down, he wouldn't get down.
My neck! Put your hands up!
He got a spine injury!
My neck! My neck! My neck!
Why are you punching him? Why are you punching him? Well, he got a spine injury. Police, he had a spine injury. I'm telling you, he got a spine injury. You can't get it.
My neck! My neck! You're under arrest!
He has a spine injury.
My neck! Put your hands
My
behind your back! My neck!
He can't. I'm telling you, he got a fucking spine injury.
Sir, put your hands behind your back!
They ain't even listening. I'm glad I'm getting this on video.
Put this arm behind your back!
He has a spine injury. I'm telling you, he can't. I done told you that 20 times. No, you heard me. I told you he had a spine injury.
Take this.
He has a spine injury.
Minnie, take this.
I got it all on tape.
Take this.
That guy kept punching him. I repeated over and over and over again. How the fuck he gonna put his hand behind his back when I'm constantly telling you this?
I have a spine and I have a fucking spine injury. You should have listened. Man, what the fuck you mean? You shouldn't have put your hands on me. I didn't resist. I didn't resist. Yes, you did. I didn't resist. No, it's okay. Okay, sorry. I got medical attention. I can't put my hands on my fucking back, bitch.
Ryan, you need to shut up.
I'll go get my medical records.
You were asked several times. Okay. Put your hand behind your back now, man. Watch it. Behind your back.
Yep, it's